I like to have a good time when I listen to my horror podcast.
Her left arm
Oh,
was
that's
chopped
so.
off.
Oh my god,
Caused
really?
a panic all over the
Prolonged
country.
their deaths for like months and
The
months.
frightening, alarming, real-life tales show is my horror podcast.
My horror podcast.
That's
Give
it?
pause it.
Nitz,
'cause-
this is your scary part?
Be scared and laugh hard with the frightening, alarming, real-life tales show every Friday on all major podcasting platforms. Don't say I didn't warn you.
For more local podcasts, check out more shows from Pilipinas Indie Podcast and Entertainment Network. Hype Network presents. Welcome to your unfiltered Tagalog Wrestling Podcast. This is the THEMTG Show Podcast. Okay, we're good. So, welcome to your unfiltered Tagalog Wrestling Podcast. And this is the MTG Show Podcast, a wrestling podcast. Okay, for tonight, I decided to record 2 episodes. Ni-record ko na agad 2 episodes. So, this is one of them. And then afterwards, baka i-record ko na yung aking episode 91. In advance, special episode kasi yon. So, itatakal ko dun is my top 10 gimmicks of NXT 2.0 so far. So, syempre, sobrang importante nun kasi inumpisahan natin sa ATD. Yung ATD episode niya pala, baka i-drop ko siya before Sunday. Sunday Manila time. And yun ang malinaw ngayon. And medyo kinukulangan ako sa oras. Kaya di ko na gano'n naasikaso yung podcast na yun. But ito-drop ko siya within this week bago ko i-drop itong follow-up episode na gagawin natin or i-drop natin on Tuesday Manila time. So we're going to talk about top 10 gimmicks in 2.0 so far. Kung ano yung nagpapa-impress sa akin, yung mga nagugustuhan ko so far sa 2.0, and yun sa tingin ko yung pwede mag-stand out sa NXT 2.0 habang tumatagal itong process na to ng pagre-repackage nila sa NXT 2.0. But for tonight, we're going to talk about NXT Vengeance Day, yung review natin since wala na tayong takeovers. We decided to isama na sa ibang episodes yung mga reviews natin about Vengeance Day since it naman ay Tuesdays lang naman or Wednesday dito sa atin. And yung ating Elimination Chamber predictions na mangyayari na this Sunday Manila time sa Peacock and on WWE Network and other platforms na inyo pong pinapanooran ng pay-per-views or premium live event. And of course, syempre, nag-shape up na rin ang Revolution card na gaganapin sa March 6 Manila time. Ay, 7 sa Manila, sorry. 7 nga pala sa Manila. And then, of course, yung ating mga wrestling news, we're going to talk about Cody, Rhodes, Stone Cold, the 205 live shit replaced by Level Up show, and of course, our predictions for Elimination Chamber. So before we start this episode formally, I want to invite you guys to use my links on the description below nga pala sa link www.thetmtgshowpodcast. Nandun lahat from Shopee, Lazada, yung ating Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and yung TikTok ng podcast, yung Patreon na hindi ko pa din masikaso. Sorry about that. Sorry. Kasi di ko gano'n nasikaso yung Patreon natin for now. But siguro sa mga ibang araw, malalaman natin kung ano yung magiging plano doon sa ating Patreon. But for sure, cash money ko lang yun for now. And sige na, we're going to start with my NXT Vengeance Day review. So since sabi ko nga, hindi na siya takeover na live event na ginaganap na separate sa Peacock or Network. And instead, ito ay naging special 2-hour episode of NXT 2.0. So, it's kinda make sense na kailangan ko nang isama na lang to sa mga episodes ng podcast moving forward. So, mag-umpisa tayo sa weaponized steel cage match between Pete Dunne and Tony D'Angelo. That match is pretty damn good. Personally, parang bitin pa ako. Parang nabibitin ako a little bit on the build. I know the build, bitin ako. Bitin ako ng medyo. And then, yung match itself is kinda short. Alam ko mahaba sa with commercial, syempre mahaba yun. Hindi lang talaga ako sanay na sobrang ikli na nakukuha natin when it comes to this kind of stuff na konti lang yung TV matches and then mas mahaba yung mga nakukuha natin on pay-per-views or live events. And this case, hindi naman tayo binigo. Kaya lang, bitin kasi nalilimit noong time, noong oras kung gaano kahaba yung pay-per-view. So, it's kinda bitin. But, binigay naman sa atin kung ano yung magiging point itong feud na to. So, Pete Dunne defeated Tony D'Angelo in a fantastic weaponized steel cage match. Oo, sobrang fantastic nun para sa akin. Although, meron lang akong isang complaint. Ano na lagay nung gimmick ni Tony? Medyo it's kinda confusing na kailangan ko dapat i-discuss sa episode 91. But, kailangan ko na i-rant. Ano yung gimmick ba ni Tony D'Angelo? Hindi ko malaman kung ano ba talaga yung gimmick. Dumarating sa punto na medyo hindi ko na makuha kung ano yung gimmick ni Tony D'Angelo. Sana pagka alam ko matalo na siya, at sana ma-build siya ulit. I-build siya into that kind of gimmick na gusto nila iparating. Since NXT 2.0 is more on building up gimmicks naman. They can build the gimmick of Tony D'Angelo pa. And sana mas maganda kumpara dun sa pinapakita ng mga big nets. Pero yun, ganun lang naman ang impression ko about the weaponized steel cage. And anyways, the match is 3 out of 5 for me. And then we got Toxic Attraction versus Indy Hartwell and Persia Berota in a tag titles match for the NXT Women's Tag Team titles. Ito. Wala na na-expect ko na to eh. But, ito sabihin ko lang, sobrang simple and sweet. I think this is the best match of Gigi Dolan and JC Jing. I think this is their best match yet on NXT TV. Wala akong pakialam sa mga haters ng Toxic Attraction. But I think this is their best TV match so far ng dalawang to. And I wish mag-improve pa sila sa mga susunod na laban. Kaya lang medyo nakukulangan ako sa build-up itong feud na to. Parang mas nafo-focus pa to sa, 'di ba, may build din ngayon na 'di ba may kasama sila Malik, I think. Oo, tas yung story pa nila Indy Hartwell and Dexter Lumis parang na-overshadow pa din dito sa story na to. So it's kinda mas natutuunan nila ng pansin kaysa doon sa match mismo nila dito sa Toxic. So it's kinda disappointing. So my score on that is 2 out of 5. And then we got the North American Championship match. It's Carmelo Hayes versus Cameron Grimes for the North American Championship. For me, this is one of the most impressive matches of this card. Not because of Tony, not because of Carmelo. It's because of Grimes plus bonus na lang sa akin si Carmelo. Carmelo proved his point every time, every week. And I think habang tumatagal itong run ni Melo, pataas din ang pataas yung kanyang confidence plus yung kanyang lakas sa crowd and yung pagka-brusko niya, halos nakikita na rin natin dito sa TV, which is impressive. And later on, baka mas maganda pa yung magiging run nito kaysa kay Braun Breaker. But yeah, I think the match is pretty impressive. Although there's two things that I need to I love the clean finish on this, but sana hindi nang ganito yung magiging role ni Cameron Grimes unless dadalhin na siya sa main roster after Mania. But I think hindi pa siya dadalhin sa ganung punto. Sobrang aga pa. Sobrang aga pa para sa akin na dadalhin siya sa main roster and then marirelease din naman siya later on. No, it's kinda lame and stupid. Sana lang gandahan pa. Enhance pa nila yung build kay Cameron Grimes and it's good. Maganda siya para sa akin. And then, I score nga pala yung kay Grimes and Carmelo Hayes is 4 out of 5. That's a fantastic match. Back and forth. Sobrang solid. And then, the MSK versus Creed Brothers for the Dusty Cup Men's Finals. It's kinda expected ko na kasi nag-feud ang Diamond Mine and Imperium. And hindi na rin ako nagulat sa decision, but Creed Brothers deserves the win. And it makes sense. Props din sa MSK, but definitely this year belongs to Creed Brothers. My rating for this is 4 out of 5. And then the main event of NXT Vengeance Day is Braun Breaker defending the NXT Championship versus Santos Escobar. I think this match is not the thing that we expected too much. But definitely, ito yung alam mo na yung mangyayari. Kasi may susunod din na build na binibuild na nila already since last week. So, it's Dolph Ziggler. By the way, my score on MSK and Creed Brothers, 4 out of 5. And then, I think the Braun and Santos Escobar is not the best thing na pwede nyo makuha on TV. But, I think na-deliver niya yung purpose ng match. It's kinda nagulat ako na akala ko si Santos na yung mananalo ng title, but hindi pa naman. Sayang nga eh. Sobrang sayangan ako doon sa part na akala mo mananalo na si Santos, pero hindi pa. Sobrang sayang nun, but Braun deserves the win. First defense pa lang naman to. Marami pa tayong dapat abangan kay Braun Breaker and kay Santos, of course. And ma-official na din yung match niya versus Dolph Ziggler later on. Baka nga ganapin to sa Stand and Deliver na hindi pa natin alam lahat ng details. Probably for the next few days, malalaman na natin lahat ng details noong takeover or Stand and Deliver. Doon sa pay-per-view. Pay-per-view to or live event. So, may rating for Braun and Santos Escobar. Tama. It's 3 out of 5. Sobrang saktuan lang. Not the best match for me. Not the worst. But definitely na-deliver lang yung purpose nitong match na to. So, that's it for my NXT Vengeance Day review. And I'm going to take my first commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about my Raw, SmackDown review plus Elimination Chamber. And of course, other news sa part 3 nitong ating episode AEW Dynamite, yung balita kay Cody, kay Stone Cold, sabay-sabay na natin i-discuss plus yung 205 live sa ating pagbabalik. But for now, let's check our other podcast here on Pipe Network.
Gusto niya bang malaman kung paano kami nakikipag-collab sa mga brands in the MT Show podcast? We use Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast. If meron kang podcast, sign up now at podmetrics.co and use my code THEMTGSHOWPOD to get full control on how you monetize your show regarding of its size. Again, sign up now at podmetrics.co and use my code THEMTGSHOWPOD. If you're an advertiser who wants to collab with us, head on over to advertiser.podmetrics.co and fill up the form. Again, Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast.
You are listening to the MTG Show podcast, an unfiltered Tagalog wrestling podcast where they talk about anything and everything about professional wrestling. Speaking of professional, we are professionally going to segue to our own show, Rule 20 Podcast, where the only professional thing we do are done mostly off the record, behind the cam, and under the sheets. Again, that's Rule 20, available wherever you are listening to this right now. And now back to the podcast.
Hello. Okay, we're back on the podcast. I want to say thank you for everyone who is listening on this week's episode of the podcast. So, this is the part 2 of the episode of this week's podcast. So, start tayo with my SmackDown and then Raw. Tapos yung predictions ko for this year's Elimination Chamber. So, start tayo with Roman Goldberg interviews respectively. I like the short but sweet interviews of Roman and Goldberg saying that Roman is gonna Goldberg at the Elimination Chamber in Saudi. That's impressive. And then yung kay Goldberg, I think at this point wala akong rason para i-like si Goldberg. Although I like his match versus Lashley at Crown Jewel, but that's it. I think sobrang shuffle lang nito, sobrang random. Walang daratingan na person, filler lang to. Kumbaga, parang sobrang laking filler lang ito ni Goldberg. Na it's kinda unexpected filler na din. Noong lumabas yung rumor about Goldberg, sobrang yun na. Yun na yan. Wala na tayong dapat asahan na fuck it. Sobrang expected na to. Goldberg's going to appear at the Elimination Chamber, is going to fight Roman for the championship. And that's it. Okay. And then we got the Insane episode podcast ni Sami Zayn. I think pwede ko na sabihin, I think yung spoiler about next week's episode of SmackDown, but no, it's kinda civil tayo dito. But there's a match na official na for next week's episode, or this week's rather. So it's Sami Zayn versus Shinsuke Nakamura for the Intercontinental Championship. Next week ko na i-discuss yung thoughts ko about that match sa ating review ng Elimination Chamber. And then, of course, tungo tayo doon sa main event, SmackDown Women's Championship. It's Charlotte Flair versus Naomi in a one-on-one match. I think this is one of the best women's title on the SmackDown history so far. And yung And yung ganito kahabang match kay Naomi, that's impressive for me. Sobrang impressive na to. Hindi ko akalain na aabot sa ganitong punto na ganito kaangas yung mga talents ng E. Especially Charlotte of course and Naomi nakakasabay din. So that's why it's impressive para sa akin. And for me, the women's title match nga pala ko, i-rate ko siya. I love the match, the plot, and yung point of that match is pretty straight up. Parang andun na yung punto na Ronda and Naomi is going to team up against Sonya Deville and Charlotte. And yun na yun. That's the point. Parang hindi naman natin kailangan paghiwalayin yung mga champions and the Royal Rumble winner. Sobrang unnecessary siya at this point. And since in-announce na din naman ni Ronda yung kanyang kalaban, I don't think it's unnecessary purpose pa. Since nag-announce na nga rin siya ng kanyang opponent for this year's WrestleMania. Ayun. So, my rating for Naomi Charlotte match is 4 out of 5. That's impressive for a SmackDown match. And sobrang bihira. Sobrang bihira yung ganitong matchup. I think papasadahin natin ng konti yung SmackDown. I love the Los Notarios versus New Day rematch. And I think the Naomi segment on opener, that's impressive for me. Sobrang sobrang ganda ng point ng promo na yun ni Sonya Deville. And let's go to Raw. So Raw, let's start with the obvious shit na nagkaroon ng opening stuff, Brock and Lashley face to face, and then nagpaisa-isa na yung mga participants pa for this year's Elimination Chamber. I think it's kinda obvious na we're getting one or two matches from this field at WrestleMania or probably SmackDown after Mania, after Raw, after Mania. Wala akong pake. Basta I think on this field alone, makakabuo na tayo ng 2 matches. O isa. Diba ganda naman nangyayari before na may isang match 2 na nagmula dito sa chamber. And I think hindi siya different ngayon. Kung dati naalala nyo, sobrang bihira ng ganong mga stuff. Yung mga nakaraang chambers naman, it's pretty obvious na gagawin nila yon. Ngayon, hindi siya nalalayo and gagawin nila ulit yun. For this year's Elimination Chamber, yun ang nafe-feel ko. And next, let's talk about Priest and AJ Styles. Ano ba ang thoughts ko? I think it's pretty okay. It's better than last week. And yan last week I think is kinda AJ Styles getting momentum for his easy match versus Damian Priest. It's pretty odd for me but wala na ring direction si Damian Priest but it's okay. Tanggap ko. Parang okay lang. Parang we're going to give Priest a defeat and then a loss, then move on. Ganun lang. It's kind of stupid. And then, let's move on to the gauntlet match. The women's gauntlet match with the winner will enter Elimination Chamber last. So, it's Bianca Belair winning the chamber. Winning the women's gauntlet match. And siya na nga yung mag-enter last doon sa match. My thoughts on that is, man, Rhea Ripley so legit. At this point, sobrang legit ni Rhea Ripley. No, sobrang legit niya at this point. They just built Rhea Ripley again. I think, sabi ko again kasi, di ba, if you remember, di ba, nasira yung push niya kay Charlotte. At now, di na nga nabigyan ulit. Yung 2021, di pa rin na nabawi yung kay Asuka. I don't think nagkaroon na siya ng redemption after that. I don't think so. Parang hindi ko maalala na gano'n ang ginawa nila kay Asuka. and kay Rhea, them. And then, focus tayo doon sa Rollins-Orton match main event. I think this is one of the easiest picks and easiest stuff that they did since medyo kailangan din nila ilayo-layo o i-shuffle muna yung Riddle Orton versus Alpha Academy feud. Parang they have to deal with this since si Riddle nga, di ba, feud niya ngayon sila Rollins as part of the Elimination Chamber. This is a pretty fun match for me. Sobrang kulit nito. Darating ako sa punto na magiging masaya lang ako, mapanood ko lang talaga si Riddle. And I'm not going to complain at all. Hindi ako magko-complain. Because this is so fucking good. And getting this match is much better than I expected doon sa last week's episode of Raw. And I think this is pretty much it for Raw. It's time to talk about my AEW Dynamite predictions bago tayo magpunta doon sa iba pa nating news, Cody, Stone Cold, and 205 Live stuff. So let's start with AEW Dynamite. So si CM Punk, in-announce niya na that he will fight MJF on March sa Revolution pay-per-view in a dog collar match. So syempre nakatali sila parehas in a dog collar, no escape whatsoever. They can use the dog collar as a weapon. The only way to win is by pinfall or submission. That's a pretty good choice by CM Punk. But I think hindi naman mananalo si Punk dito. I don't know if ako lang ang may take na to. I don't think Punk is gonna win this match. I don't think Punk is gonna win. First impression. Hindi ko talaga iniisip na Punk ang mananalo to. Sorry. It's just my take. But I don't think Punk is gonna win. And then Bryan Danielson versus Dean Moriarty. I think this is pretty impressive match na hindi ko in-expect na magiging maganda. Nakakala mo mabilis lang. But no, we're getting a wrestling match for sure. And DB proving himself that he can wrestle pa, kaya niya pa. And the next Hall of Famer of Ring of Honor is so fucking good on that note. And si Lee Moriarty, in the other hand, siya isang legit. Sobrang legit niya at this point na wala akong masabi sa kanya. Even though may konti pang improvements na kailangan kapakapain, makikita pa natin yung difference in the next few days. Ano? Then, diretso tayo dun sa implosion ng Inner Circle. So, it's Jericho and Hager versus Santana and Ortiz. I think Santana and Ortiz winning the match makes sense to me. Sobrang may sense itong laban na to. Darating kasi tayo sa punto na it's very obvious na darating na rin yung split date ng Inner Circle. Si Sammy syempre magsosolo, Jericho and Hager magkasama yan. And then Sammy tuloy. Si Santana Ortiz, makakasama na yan sa tag title picture. That's pretty impressive and maganda yung nagiging takbo nitong story. Tapos dagdag pa natin Eddie Kingston na possible pang sumama kina Santana and Ortiz feuding against Jericho. Man, that's so nuts for me. I wish si Santana yung manalo dito sa feud na to. And regardless, wala nang Inner Circle. Yun nga lang ang con na once na naging most dominating stable ng EW, mawawala na sa EW. Kaya sad. And then, wait lang. Speaking of EW, let's talk about the shit na nangyari after nung Bryan Danielson and Dean Moriarty match. So si Jon Moxley, parang hindi niya ni-reject yung offer ni Bryan Danielson. Instead, parang kino-consider niya. Dumarating siya sa punto na i-consider niya yung offer. Sinabi niya pa na, I'm not going to accept it unless magbibilid tayo parehas. Hindi ako makipaglaban sa'yo side by side unless hindi ka nagbibilid. That's pretty interesting for me na to see a Danielson Moxley match at Revolution, or dito na rin siguro malalaman yung formation noong stable nilang gagawin. But for sure naman, it's gonna be a banger. Obviously, it's gonna be a banger match between between Moxley and Danielson. Brian Danielson. And for sure, it's gonna be good. No? Pero tamang panahon tayo para pag-usapan yung predictions ko dyan. And then, speaking of, let's talk about Mercedes Martinez versus Thunder Rosa. That's a pretty good match. Man, why AEW doesn't do these matches like this? Especially in their women's side, man. Maraming magagaling sa women's side ng AEW but they can't build matches like this. And this match is one of the biggest example of their impressive lineup sa women's. They can build the women's division as long as they're fucking impressive. And almost all of the talents is fucking impressive. But they can't build a women's division. Kasi tingin ko perfect talaga. No? Marami sila sa women's division. But they can't build a fucking women's division. It's kinda sad. And then finally, the main event. Sammy Guevara versus Darby Allin for the TNT Championship. Man. I love this match. Personally, this is gonna be one of my matches of the week sa picks ko next week. I think it should be a pick of the week. Any time of the week. I think this banger deserves a spot talaga doon sa list natin. Now, hindi ko na-rate but I think this is gonna be one of the biggest bangers in AEW. And after that, the Andrade, El Idolo, and Matt Hardy stole titles, signing up for a Andrade versus Sammy Guevara match in the future. Probably Revolution as well. And yan, that's pretty much it for my AEW thoughts. So, well, it's time for me to take another commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about my Elimination Chamber predictions and my picks of the week. More wrestling news. Bago yun. But for now, let's check our other podcast here on Pipe Network.
Mainit na diskusyunan,
Masarap na kwentuhan,
malinamnam na usapan,
at nakakagising na balitaktakan.
parang kape lang. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Weya Angeline
Join us in our conversations at Coffee na Lang Dear Podcast.
This is Mike and Ham from Please Pause. Meron kaming munting podcast where we talk about all things TV and film. And despite that, surprisingly, we are still married.
Control freak ka kasi sa podcast na to.
30 seconds lang po ang meron tayo. Pakibilisan.
From blockbusters to classics, superheroes to love teams, hit series to teleseries, join us as we have meaningful and meaningless conversations on the stuff we watched. Someday, mababago ka rin ang tagline na yan.
Check out Please Pause on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other major podcast platforms.
See you there!
Okay, so we're back on the podcast. So, ayan. It's time for me to predict this year's Elimination Chamber pay-per-view premium live event na magte-take place Saturday US time, Sunday Manila time, na madaling araw. Holy shit, that's kind of stooge for me. But It's gonna be a big card since Saudi event to. But yeah, it's pretty impressive for Saudi. So let's start with the lower card muna. So it's Drew McIntyre versus Madcap Moss in a falls count anywhere match. At this point, it's pretty obvious. It's Drew McIntyre winning the match. And then the Miz versus Rey Mysterio one-on-one match. I think at this point, Mysterio doesn't need to prove himself. So that's why I'm gonna vote for Miz. Plus, wala pa siyang panalo sa Premium Live Events. So yeah, the Miz. And then, so it's Ronda Rousey and Naomi versus Sonya Deville and Charlotte Flair. May stipulation pa atang i-reveal for this week's SmackDown. Probably it's nakatali yung isang kamay ni Ronda sa likod. So it's pretty obvious. Naomi and Ronda Rousey. And then Roman Reigns versus Goldberg in a one-on-one match for the WWE Universal Championship. Wala na akong argument dito. I think Roman's going to win this match. And then, the Viking Raiders challenging the Usos for the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Walang sense sa akin pag nanalo ang Viking Raiders, but I would love to see them winning the titles. But parang ang dating sa akin walang sense. It's gonna be Usos winning the match. So it's Becky Lynch versus Lita for the Raw Women's Championship. Obviously Becky. And then the Women's Elimination Chamber match with the winner will face the Raw Women's Champion at WrestleMania. So it's Liv Morgan, Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, Doudrop, Nikki ASH, and TBA na na-reveal nga as Alexa Bliss as per this week's Raw dahil dun sa mga kanyang therapy sessions. So nireveal nga na si Alexa Bliss yung sixth woman doon sa chamber match. At this point, it's pretty obvious that Bianca Belair is going to lose since medyo may curse yung last entrant sa chamber, medyo may curse yun. So, it's kinda a disadvantage for Bianca. It's either, Liv Morgan or Alexa Bliss at this point. Really plays a plus then as well. And then finally, the main event of the Elimination Chamber, Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar versus Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles versus Austin Theory versus Riddle for the WWE Championship. I think there's two scenarios here. Number one, yung obvious side that Brock will win and then we're getting the winner-take-all match at WrestleMania, Brock and Roman for the WWE and Universal Championship. Uulitin ko, walang unification. Walang unification na magaganap. Instead, it's a winner-take-all na hindi naman tatagal whatsoever. Kaya, I don't think yung mga iniisip nyo na winner-take-all plus unification, ganun, hindi siya mangyayari. Winner take all, it's okay lang. Pero yung parehas na nga, tapos ang gusto nyo pa is winner take all. Holy shit. Tapos yung ano ba tawag dito? Winner take all na. Tapos may kasama pang unification. It's kinda embarrassing. It's kinda BS. Okay lang yung winner take all since di naman magtatagal. So I think Brock is gonna win, or kung hindi, Lashley is going to retain. So that's my predictions for this year's Elimination Chamber. So kung ano yung predictions nyo, let me know in the comments below or in the chat box. Follow my social media. So let's talk about something a little bit before we go. So Cody Rhodes So nitong Wednesday, nabalita nga pala that Cody and Brandi Rhodes left AEW. Some reasons cited that medyo di na siya kontento sa kanyang run sa AEW. Plus, he wants more money. Kasi, syempre, ito naman si Kuya Cody nyo, nangangarap ng gising. That he thinks he's a big fish on AEW, but he didn't. Sobrang taas kasi ng tingin niya sa sarili. Kaya yan, nagmamataas masyado. And wala siyang choice kundi bumalik sa WWE. And according sa sources natin, Cody Rhodes is possibly bumalik sa WWE. And baka nga ay nagtitip na siya ng mga videos, bignets for his comeback soon sa WWE. And I think hindi kasama si Brandi sa deal na to. Hindi siya kasama. Pero I wish na kasama siya as a backup lang ni Cody or side or balay niya lang. Pero I don't care. I don't care either. And then, so also we're going to talk about Stone Cold a little quick. So, ang balita ngayon, si Stone Cold gustong kunin ng WWE as opponent for Kevin Owens since nagplant na nga rin sila ng story sa Raw that Owens hates Texas and it's kinda obvious naman na pagkaputok ng promo na yun, pumutok din yung balita that Stone Cold is possibly, there's a word possibly na mag-return in the ring sa WWE. And I decided to take it with a grain of salt kasi hindi pa naman tayo sure on what's going to happen on Stone Cold's return. Kung totoo rin yung return, edi good. Pero I feel bad for Austin kasi masyado na rin siya matanda for competing. I'm fine for a spot, but a match, it's kind of stupid for me. I thought pa naman that he is going to fight with Rollins in a Tyro match or tag Tyros, but mukhang di natin makukuha yun this time. It's kinda pretty disappointing for me. No? Nalulungkot ako. Okay. And finally, it's 205 Live. RIP 205 nga pala. And starting tomorrow, once na-drop tong episode, so 205 Live is gonna be replaced by NXT Level Up na tinip na nila sa Performance Center before Vengeance Day. So, it's basically a parang dynamite match or format for NXT 2.0, 1-hour show na parang gaya din sa 205 before, but basically parang ganun yung format niya, no? Mga hindi nyo nakikita before sa NXT TV, makikita nyo na dito sa Level Up show na to ng 205. And parang showcase na rin to. Ako, ang take ko lang dito, simpleng take ko lang. Kung parang gagawin nyo rin siyang silent war with AEW Rampage, sana ginawa nila din nila tong ginawa nila tong TV show or YouTube, something like that. Some YouTube TV show na ginagawa na rin ng practice ng Impact in AEW, other companies. Sana ginawa na lang din nila yun. May peacock naman sila for other stuff. And it's kinda plus one if hindi nila to as a YouTube or a TV show, but they didn't kasi idol na mga pag-compete with Dynamite and Rampage. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this week's episode. Titingnan natin next week kung ano yung thoughts ko on Level Up and our fallout for Elimination Chamber. Let me know on all of the social media platforms kung ano pa yung predictions nyo for this year's Elimination Chamber. So with that, follow the podcast on all of the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and on TikTok at the TG Show Pod. Follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and on other podcast platforms that you use the most. Please rate the podcast on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts 5 stars as soon as you can. Na napakinggan nyo tong episodes and share it with your friends, family, and friends. So once chill lang na wrestling talk here on Spotify and other platforms. So for me and Pipe Network, follow the podcast network, Pipe Network, on all of the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and the rest of social media platforms at Pipe Network. And also, please support all the other podcasts of Pipe Network, including the Pipe Network shows Tao Bato, especially kasali rin ako sa Tao Bato. If you want to join Tao Bato, please check Pipe Network's Facebook page for more details. And don't forget to visit Pipe Network's website, pipenetwork.co, for more Pipe Network shows. And my social media platforms at AG Penera on Twitter and Instagram. That's pretty much it for this week's episode. Remember, stay safe, stay reso. Don't forget your face mask, boosters as you can, and vaccines nga pala. And remember, on May 2022, please, wag po tayo magboboto na magnanakaw and sinungaling. Ayan. The MT Show Podcast out. See you on the next episode.
Catch the Pizarra Tales weekly as we tackle issues about education and share experiences about teaching. Hosted by James Australia, available on your favorite podcast platforms.
Did you know that podcasts are the new radio? You can listen to your favorite shows anytime, anywhere on demand. Visit the Pilipinas Indie Podcast and Entertainment Network at pipenetwork.co to see our list of shows. And like us on Facebook to get updates on our latest episodes, events, promos, and freebies. The Pipe Network, taking podcasting to the next level.